There is a version of fame so consuming that it swallows everything around it. The friendships, the routines, the sense of who you were before the world knew your name. Most people who reach that level of celebrity either lean into it completely or lose themselves trying to escape it. Dave Chappelle did something different. At the height of his career, with one of the most watched television shows in America and a $50 million deal sitting on the table, he walked away, quietly, deliberately, and when he did, he walked toward a woman most people had never heard of. A woman who was not a celebrity, not an actress, not a model, not an industry name. She was a Filipino girl from Brooklyn who had known him before any of it, and she has remained by his side through every storm since. This is her story, and their story, because behind the legend, there has always been a woman the world barely knows. Dave Chappelle is, by almost any measure, the most decorated comedian of his era. His path to that status began long before the awards and the sold-out arenas. He was a Washington, D.C. kid, the son of an academic father and a mother who taught at a historically black college. Comedy was in his bones from the beginning, and by his mid-20s he had already done stand-up specials and carved out a reputation as one of the sharpest voices in the room. But it was Chappelle's show, which premiered on Comedy Central in 2003, that changed everything. The show was enormously popular and put Chappelle on the map. It broke records. It became the best-selling television on DVD release of its time. Every sketch, every character, every skit felt like something new. Comedy that was daring, culturally layered, and executed with a precision that made it look effortless. America fell in love with him, and Hollywood came calling with its biggest offer. His television legacy and his Netflix comedy specials earned him 3 Emmy Awards. His hosting appearances on Saturday Night Live in 2017 and 2021 added 2 more Emmys, and his most recent SNL monologue ran 17 minutes. The longest in the show is 50-year history. He received the Kennedy Center's Mark Twain Prize for American Humor in 2019, and in February 2025, he became the first comedian in history to receive the NAACP's President's Award. By every metric, Dave Chappelle is a titan, which makes who he chose to build his private life with all the more remarkable. Long before any of those awards, long before the specials and the record-breaking DVD sales, there was Brooklyn. When Dave Chappelle sat down with Howard Stern in 2001, he described Elaine as a Filipina from Brooklyn and said he met her in that same New York City borough. Elaine Mendoza Erfe was born to devout Christian Filipino parents on the 31st of August 1974. And grew up in Brooklyn. She was not a part of the entertainment world. She was not chasing fame or proximity to it. She was just a young woman from an immigrant family living her life in one of the most vibrant, complicated neighborhoods in America. Their meeting in the 1990s was not announced. There was no red carpet moment, no magazine spread. It was 2 people in a borough in a moment that neither of them could have fully predicted would last a lifetime. What we do know is this: she knew him before the fame arrived, and that, as Dave has said himself in multiple interviews, is everything. She was with me when I was poor, Chappelle revealed to Howard Stern. That single line tells you more about Elaine Chappelle than any press release ever could. She was not drawn to what he would become. She was drawn to who he already was. According to various sources, Elaine once aspired to become a professional chef, a detail that speaks to someone with her own ambitions, her own identity, her own path. She was walking before their lives intersected. When Chappelle told Stern about Elaine during a 2001 interview, it was also because she was expecting their first child. The relationship had already deepened into something permanent. There is something quietly cinematic about it. The comedian who would eventually be called untouchable sitting in Brooklyn in love with a woman his audience would never fully get to know. When details of Dave Chappelle's personal life began to surface publicly, his Filipino wife, his private family, his unexpected ordinariness at home, reactions were genuinely mixed. Some fans were surprised. Here was a man whose comedy crackled with urban energy and cultural sharpness, and his home life was by all accounts deeply quiet. The cultural contrast attracted curiosity. A black Muslim comedian married to a Filipino Catholic woman from Brooklyn. That alone defied easy categorization, but the framing of ordinary also carried a certain power. In a Hollywood landscape where celebrity relationships were treated as spectator sports, the Chappelles refused to play. There were no coordinated paparazzi moments, no magazine cover photo shoots together, no joint social media presence. Elaine had no public platform of her own. That restraint in the age of social media branding was itself a statement. Dave has said that Elaine keeps track of what people are saying about him online while he prefers to stay offline. "My wife, if it gets real bad, she'll let me know," he said during an interview. She was, in that sense, his buffer between the noise of celebrity culture and the stillness of their actual life. Not a publicist, not a manager, just a wife who paid attention so he didn't have to. For many observers, that dynamic was quietly admirable. She chose anonymity when she could have had attention. She chose family when she could have had fame. The couple exchanged vows in a private ceremony in 2001. There were no celebrity guests reported, no entertainment press invited. It was a marriage that began the way it has continued, quietly and on their own terms. Dave and Elaine have 3 children together. Their oldest child, son Suleiman, was born the same year the couple wed in 2001. 2 years later, they welcomed another son, Ibrahim, and in 2009, they added daughter Sanea to the family. The Chappelles have raised all 3 children largely out of the spotlight, a deliberate and consistent choice that has held firm even as Dave's fame has only grown. The family has a 65-acre estate in Yellow Springs, Ohio. That move from New York City to a small Midwestern town was perhaps the single clearest signal about the kind of family life Dave and Elaine were committed to building. Yellow Springs is a place where you can breathe, where anonymity is possible, where children can grow up without being dissected by the internet. After meeting and falling in love with Dave, Elaine chose to devote herself to raising the couple's 3 children, setting aside her earlier aspirations in the culinary world. That is not a small thing to acknowledge. It was a choice, made consciously, and the stability it created for the family is something Dave has spoken about with evident gratitude. Goal cast. "I love marriage," Chappelle said during a later appearance on The Howard Stern Show. "I actually love marriage. I feel the quality of my life as a married man is substantially better than when I was single. No marriage of more than 2 decades lived under the pressure of global fame arrives without its difficult chapters." The most widely reported turning point in Dave Chappelle's life, and by extension, Elaine's, came in 2005. At the peak of Chappelle's show is success, with Comedy Central offering an extraordinary $50 million deal for additional seasons. Dave abruptly left the production and flew to South Africa. Chappelle also said that Elaine helped him weather the rockier parts of celebrity, such as when he infamously walked away from Chappelle's show amid a host of personal issues. The public speculation was immediate and often unkind. People invented explanations. Mental health crises were suggested. Addiction was rumored. The tabloid machine ran hot. What actually happened, as Chappelle later explained across multiple interviews, was a man reassessing his relationship with the industry he'd built his life inside, and deciding that his integrity mattered more than the contract. Elaine was not exactly thrilled. "My wife's still a little salty at me," he told Conan O'Brien afterward. "She is not mad at me, but don't think you are going to walk away from $50 million and your wife's just going to be cool with it." That candor is telling. She didn't disappear, she didn't walk away. She was honest with him about how the decision landed, and then she stayed. That is the texture of an actual marriage, not a perfect partnership, but a durable one. In later years, Dave's Netflix specials also generated significant controversy, particularly around his material involving transgender communities. The debates were loud and sometimes fierce through it all. Elaine remained a private presence. She did not make public statements. She did not insert herself into the cultural argument. She remained, as she had always been, apart from the noise. Today, Elaine Chappelle is where she has been for over 2 decades by her husband's side, and largely away from the public eye. The couple continues to reside on their farm in Yellow Springs, Ohio, far from Hollywood's spotlight. Elaine remains primarily a homemaker, focused on their family's daily life. Their 3 children are now young adults. Suleiman is in his mid-20s, Ibrahim is in his early 20s, and Sanea, who appeared alongside her father in the 2018 film A Star is Born, is now in her mid-teens. Elaine has no known social media presence. She does not give interviews. She does not have a public brand. She has maintained that choice with remarkable consistency across the full arc of her husband's fame. But she does appear selectively, meaningfully. She accompanied Dave to the 56th NAACP Image Awards in Pasadena, California, in February 2025, where he received the President's Award, the first comedian ever to be given that honor. She was photographed beside him, composed and present, as she has been at other milestone moments throughout the years: the SNL 40th anniversary event in 2015, the GQ Men of the Year Awards in 2014, a Dior fashion show in Paris in 2022. She shows up when it matters, then she steps back. Dave Chappelle, The Unstoppable, his most recent Netflix special, was released in late 2025, and as of early 2026, Dave is actively performing, with a 3-night Netflix event cementing his status as the defining stand-up comedian of his generation. Through all of it, Elaine has remained the quiet constant at the center of his life. They are still married, still together, still, by all accounts, building their life in Ohio on their own terms, away from the machinery of celebrity. There is a particular kind of courage in choosing invisibility when visibility is freely available. In a culture that rewards exposure, that treats access as intimacy and presence as value, Elaine Chappelle made a different calculation. She measured her life not in followers or headlines, but in family dinners and raising 3 children in a small Ohio town, in being the person her husband calls steady ground. What the Chappelles have built together is not the version of celebrity marriage that gets featured in magazines. It is quieter than that, more resistant, and arguably, given how many high-profile relationships collapse under the weight of fame, far more successful. Dave Chappelle has spent his career saying difficult things out loud in front of rooms full of strangers, but the most meaningful work of his life may be the one that happens offstage in a house in Yellow Springs, with a woman from Brooklyn who knew him before the world did. That story has no punchline, and it doesn't need one. We'd love to hear what you think. Does the choice to stay private, to step back from the spotlight, entirely represent strength, or does it come at a cost we rarely talk about? And in a world where celebrity marriages almost always become public property, what does it mean that this one has remained after more than 20 years genuinely their own? Leave your thoughts in the comments below.